So, John, where do you get these exciting animated graphics for your presentations?
Well, funny you should ask that, Holly. Thanks. I make them in Keynote because I am a huge Keynote fan, and um, while I totally value the collaborative options that are available in Google Slides, um, and uh, use that all the time with students. I feel like when I'm presenting myself, I like the options that are available, the ability to sort of expand on fonts and uh, transitions and things, and animation. And then I've gotten really familiar with it, so I use it for graphic design too. So when I'm doing still images, turns out to be a pretty good place to work as well. So this is the first of 6 sessions on digital citizenship issues, and we want to introduce today some basics about digital citizenship and talk a little bit about the incredible resources that are available through Common Sense Education. I'm Jonathan Werner. I used to be the tech integrator at Cape Elizabeth Middle School, and now I am halfway through my first of 2 years as an MLTI ambassador. And I have with me today Holly Graffam, who will introduce herself now.
Hi, I'm Holly Graffam, and I am a colleague of Jonathan's. I'm also an MLTI ambassador. And prior to coming to this position, I was a technology instructional coach at Scarborough Middle School for the last 6 years.
And I asked Holly to come today because, first of all, we both have had the experience of having these as conversations instead of as monologues can be really much more engaging to you all who are watching, but also because she has a really deep experience with digital citizenship work and specifically with Common Sense Media. So we'll tell you a little bit about how our program works in terms of providing professional development, and then jump right into some of the questions specifically about digital citizenship we'd like to look at today. So our program is divided as ambassadors into 3 major areas. We're supporting digital citizenship work, technology integration, and then digital instructional design. So these 6 sessions that I'm doing are focused first on the first of those gears and looking at ways that we can all take a piece of the responsibility for teaching digital citizenship and offering as many resources as we can to provide what you need for your students, but also what you may need for your own development, understanding the issues. So we're going to look at a couple of places that have great resources for digital citizenship work, and then spend the second half digging into Common Sense Media / Common Sense Education specifically because theirs are so robust and really provide incredible materials directly for you and for your students, as Holly's going to show us, but also because we have a partnership with them through MLTI that has allowed us to get a lot more experience with what they have. And as Holly and I discovered a few minutes ago when we were previewing, every time we go on, there's new resources available. And so the work they're doing for you makes it so easy to do this, to integrate it into your own teaching and learning, that it feels like the single one-stop shop that's worth really digging into. But before we do that, we thought we'd show you a couple places where you may look for some of the broader concepts and maybe for resources that you want to use with students. But this would probably be more for your own development and your own understanding of what you want to focus on and how you want to sort of articulate your purpose for teaching digital citizenship. So the first thing we want to emphasize is really that it's not something you can do alone. That one of the people who's an incredible expert in this area in my school, Amanda Kozaka, is our librarian, and she teaches it consistently. Digital citizenship is a thread that runs through all of her teaching. But if she were the only place it was being taught, it gets compartmentalized, and the kids are really not getting the message about how important it is and how many different aspects there are to really provide a comprehensive understanding of the issues that arise when you're learning online and when you're using any resources that are web-based. So in Amanda's case, she's really worked hard to provide other faculty members with areas that might be interesting to them. And so, for example, everything around fair use, she's been able to embed into the social studies curriculum in 7th and 8th grade and made that a really powerful place where kids are getting those messages. But she's certainly echoing it, but by sharing that responsibility, the kids are getting a much better sense of all the different facets. And another area where we've done this in CAPE is to really try to engage families as well and getting them thinking. We've done a lot of work around your digital health and well-being, and sort of how you interact with your devices, how much time you spend online, gaming, and those conversations have been really, really powerful because parents find that they don't have the resources that they need, and when they're sending the same messages at home that you're sending, you're really getting a lot more engagement on the kids' part and a lot better sense of why the work in general is so important. So Mike Ribble is the kind of central figure for a central figure for digital citizenship issues and training at ISTE. And if you're not familiar with it, ACTIM is our main chapter of ISTE. It's the International Society for Technology and Education. And at the end of this session, we'll share the slides with you, and all the links that you see are clickable and take you right to the resources. But
Jonathan, is that a video
on the right-hand side?
Mike Ribble?
No, which I realized I should have labeled separately. It is the chairman of ISTE, the president, talking about the role of digital citizenship and how important he's found that it is for educators. So thank you for pointing that out, because that is not Mike Ribble.
But they will have access. You will be able to click on the link and watch the video.
Yes. That, and also wherever you see the underline as well. Thank you for clarifying. So Mike offers what I think is a really great, simple definition here, which is to create thoughtful, empathetic students who can wrestle with the important ethical questions at the intersection of technology and humanity. And one of the reasons I really like that is because we talk a lot in CAPE about how if you make a distinction between your digital life and your life, then you're losing out on a lot of what is real. Like your social media presence may not be a completely accurate reflection of your day-to-day life, but if you see that any action you take in social media has consequences in real life, that's a really great approach as a kid, and to begin to not see it as digital citizenship and citizenship, but a broader category of just sort of how you behave in the world. And ISTE's focus has been on thinking about creating students and then citizens who are using technology in really interesting ways. And I particularly like this idea of a positive and effective digital footprint. And in the coming weeks, we'll talk more about what that looks like. But the idea that your social media and your interactions online can have a positive purpose and not only be about the mistakes you're doing and the things you're doing wrong, something we'll talk about in just a second. But so much of the emphasis and so many of the messages kids are getting is like, hey, don't do that, that's a bad idea. And I really like how ISTE has flipped that script, and both Holly and I have really tried to adopt that sensibility about teaching kids what is great about their social media presences and the great opportunities that are out there with web-based and internet learning that aren't focusing on the mistakes they're going to make, but on the resources that are available. They talk about sort of one organizing principle that ISTE uses is the idea of the 5 competencies. So they want kids to be inclusive, informed, engaged, balanced, and alert. And they give some pretty great examples, but that third one there, using technology to make your voice heard by public leaders and shape public policy. We know that some really incredible social movements have taken root and exploded through social media, and giving kids those examples and how powerfully they can be influencers of change. really, really young students are having incredible impact in the area of environmentalism, for example. And we certainly saw during the Black Lives Matter conversations an incredible amplification happening in social media. Um, Another way to think about that work, or to offer you another framework, they have standards, student standards, and for them, 1.2 is digital citizenship, and that students recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world. And then they act in ways that that are models that are safe, legal, and ethical. And so they have offered at ISTE the series of resources that are student focused, but which really frame your educator's understanding of where you want your kids to be able to sort of demonstrate competencies over the course of your work with them. And they have also provided some great visuals. And so I just share this one on the left, which I have printed out in my classroom, that really gives kind of a touchstone, and to be able to say, like, hey, is what we're doing contributing to this? And then they have a playlist that's there on the right-hand side on YouTube, and it's 31 or 32 videos that are student-focused, sort of student-facing. So it's not that ISTE doesn't offer resources that work well with kids, but I think this is where you're going to want to turn to really frame your own understanding as the primary focus.
Jonathan, I just would
Yeah,
like to point out, for if any of our viewers here are, if their districts or their school buildings are really main guiding principle focused or inclusive, that to me, these really, I see the similarities and the connections. So if you are doing that guiding principle work, I think that this is just another avenue to look at as you are going through that.
have you used any of the ISTE resources, Holly, or do you use primarily Common Sense?
I use primarily Common Sense Media, but when I've developed curriculum and at Scarborough, we use the ISTE standards as kind of our standards and learning goals. So if I'm developing learning goals based on standards, I've used the ISTE for that. But to me, it's not like one or the other. I
Yeah,
feel like pretty well dovetailed, and often I believe that when we can take a look when we get into Common Sense Media, they'll tell you like what ISTE
yes.
standards are addressed with each of their lessons. So
I'm assuming people have heard this term, but in case you haven't, crosswalking, which is where you take one set of standards and another set and then offer links between the two. ISTE has done a really good job of making theirs, I'm going to create a new term, mappable onto, in the sense that you'll see them appear in AASL, which is American Association of School Librarians standards. We'll see them in Common Sense. And that, when I say that they provide that framework, I think, as Holly said, if you're looking for a district goal, a departmental goal, a building goal, developing your scope and sequence, this is a great place to turn. But as an individual educator, you may find some of these interpretations that we're going to look at in a second, and then the Common Sense resources to be a better entry point. So just a plug for these two people in particular, Sylvia Duckworth and Vicki Davis. They took Mike Ribble's concept, which he shares in the website, in the ISTE website, of the 9 elements of digital citizenship, and have given it a great spin, both for teachers to use as professional development opportunities, but also for classroom display and for sort of conversations with kids. And for both of them, the message is one that, as I said, Holly and I feel really strongly that you teach it as dues, and you teach it as opportunities for exploration and growth, not as punitive or things that we might think of as the dangers and the issues that arise when you stray into uncharted territory. So Holly, you had said to me
Just to
that,
add to that,
yeah,
Jonathan, when I'm teaching digital citizenship and I'm talking to my kiddos in the classroom, I'm pretty honest with them. Like, I'm not here to tell you not to do any of these things. What I am here to do is to help you be safe, secure, ethical, and responsible online. And so that's my job, is to give you the tools to be able to interact with the things that you want to do. For one thing, if I went in and told everybody they shouldn't be online gaming, I'm not going to really affect change anyway, because they're not going to stop online gaming.
yeah,
But if I can talk to them about, like, when you're online gaming, how can you do that so that you're protecting your privacy and you're interacting in a safe way. To me, that's my responsibility, to help them as they grow into more digital users, right? I think there's a fallacy that we think of these kiddos that we have right now. They are digital natives. They don't know a world really without um, digital content and interactivity, but that doesn't necessarily make them great digital citizens yet.
right.
And that's our job, is to move them from being a native to a citizen.
Nice. That's a great articulation. I think another area where both of us have talked quite a bit about the responsibility is that if we're just going to shut it down and block it and ban it, all we're doing is saying, when you go out in the world, good luck with that, which is not something we would do for any other area of content, right? We're not going to say, like, I hope you have a good time with that book that I'm sending you home with, but you're going to have to learn how to read first on your own. That there's a, a weird compartmentalization that happens with any really teaching and learning around digital citizenship and really digital issues, that feels like they're so good at it, what do I have to teach them? But it's the curation and it's the skill sets around making good choices that are not native at all. They just don't come along with the ability to swipe up and down on an iPad. So that has really motivated me to feel like I need to step in and help them develop the skills that are going to be transferable and be replicable. Because if all I'm doing is preventing them, from the access points, then when they get loosed on the world, they have no skill set to benefit from. And it's not a mental approach as teachers we would use in any other area, but somehow it's really easy to default to that in the area, I think because they're so skilled. I'd asked you earlier, Holly, how you start off, and you mentioned that you frequently use the 9Ps. This is a version of that same concept, but why do you start with sort of these concepts with your kids, and how, I guess I would say, too, when you're introducing early stage conversations about citizenship?
So we start off with the 9Ps because they're kind of the big buckets to kind of give. If you ask students, let me back up a little bit here. If you ask students what a digital citizen is, they often struggle with that because it isn't just one thing. So by using the 9Ps, these are the big buckets of digital citizenship. And we kind of I use it as a broad stroke, kind of a wide brush, if you will. And then usually I go to Common Sense Media to start dialing in a little bit more specifically into each of those big buckets.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, there are some things in Common Sense Media that are while it is super comprehensive, there are some pieces that are not part of their curriculum that I might cover in the 9Ps, particularly around digital safety. And I often bring in our school resource officer.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually well trained in DARE and other things, and they have additional resources. And as many people as you can get to come in and bring the voice about digital safety is always a plus.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I start there. It sets the groundwork so that when we dig into the curriculum a little bit deeper, they already have some background knowledge to tap into.
Yeah. And I should say the one I'm showing here is the taken directly from Mike Ribble because we referenced that earlier, but I'll include in the resources the image for and the resources for the 9Ps. As Holly mentioned, there's a lot of overlap. I think it's in the 9Ps. I think it's called privacy, and for the digital security, and then digital law. I think it's split in two places, but photos is one of the major areas where they provide that focus. So it's different terminology, different frameworks for the same basic concept of there are buckets, as Holly said, that we need to explore that are not just your online safety or not just your fair use. As I mentioned, Vicki Davis also has some really great resources in this if you're more of a simple graphic person, or this is a great one to have printed for a classroom. And just keep referring back to, oh, is that falling under digital security? Let's talk a little bit about what does that mean, and circling back to some of those issues can be really helpful for kids as well. So, turning to our friends, you may know Common Sense Media as Common Sense Media, but in fact it's focused itself to be called Common Sense Education for teachers and schools. So Common Sense Media still exists. It might do things like movie ratings and game descriptions so you know what you're getting your kids into as parents. But Common Sense Education has really given a whole different platform, as you'll see, for students to engage with the content directly, and for teachers to have some really incredibly well-organized, well-thought-out, way more than any of us individually could do. I guess I would say like an encyclopedia that you can look to and then pull directly from for your students. So they have broken their digital citizenship concepts and their sort of awareness of issues arising from the virtual and internet-based world into these 6 categories. So over the next several weeks, I'm going to take one of these at a time. So next week, for example, I'll be talking to another ambassador, Kate Meyer, about media balance and well-being, and how, as Holly mentioned, gaming, but also screen use, ways in which the social emotional learning and social emotional experience for kids can be negatively impacted by technology. That'll be our focus. And then over the next several weeks up until April break, covering the other areas, and then finishing after April break with several weeks on news and media literacy. Because my sense, I worked with Amanda, our librarian, that issue comes up over and over again. And it's one that, because of the academic nature, teachers are constantly asking us about, and it felt like it was worth giving that a particular sort of block of time to talk about all the different ways that issues can arise. And again, Common Sense having such great resources, that's the one that Holly's going to explore today, so you get a sense of what's out there. But just to be aware, over the next 5 weeks of sessions on Wednesdays, I'll be covering the ones you see here, to just provide a sense of where they have focused and what other issues arise when you land under, for example, cyberbullying, digital drama, and hate speech. It's going to bleed into your school counselors' conversations, your mental health professionals. And so getting those teams of people marshaled, the school resource officer is a great example. And those messages coming from your school resource officer are going to be so much more impactful than they would be from, Holly or I being like, hey kids, you need to remember. It also echoes that first slide about as many different voices as possible, as many different drum beats on the same basic concept. So Common Sense Education uses a version of what we talked about, but digital citizenship being the responsible use of technology to learn, create, and participate. And again, I like that this is a broader definition than just your digital presence. When you land on the Common Sense Education page, you'll see it has a bunch of different ways to approach it. So there's a professional development area, EdTech reviews, which is specific to apps that might be useful for your classroom or online resources. There's also a really terrific new series of resources around SEL. You may know that tomorrow is the statewide recognition of social emotional learning. I think it's actually called SEL Day. But where Holly's going to focus now is on the digital citizenship aspect of what Common Sense has there and its division into curriculum, resources, and games, using, as I said, the media strand as her focus. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and turn the power over to her. We're joking that we're on so many screens at any given time that we can't even figure out where to click to stop sharing, much less.
Okay. So you all should be looking at the Common Sense Media page. And the first thing that I do want to point out is that to get access to the lesson plans, the slide presentations that you'll want to be using in your classroom, you are going to have to create an account, but it's a free account that you can create. I've had mine even before I was a technology instructional coach. I was laughing with Jonathan because it uses my Hotmail account. So that kind of tells you like how old my Common Sense Media account is. So again, we're in here for educators and we're going to look at digital citizenship. And there's a plethora of different ways. These quick activities are things that can be done in 10 or 15 minutes. The digital life dilemmas are really mostly for high school kids. There's some programs over here where they take each of the strands and kind of put them in these two are like a game format, and some other things. So there's all kinds of different, and John mentioned the SEL Digital Life Resource Center. But I usually start right here by going to the lesson plans. And when you get to this page, you're going to see that I can now sort these lessons plans by a bunch of different ways. So I usually click off, because I'm middle school, I click off the grades that apply to me. And then I want to just focus on this particular strand of news and media literacy. And now you'll see I just have the lessons. So this is just a great way of filtering into exactly what it is that you want to do. I would like to point out too that they do have some Nearpods. If you do have a Nearpod account, you might want to go ahead and explore those. But the big one that I use with all of my sixth graders and is the 4 factors of fair use. And this is really about copying, pasting, using other people's work, you little bit into plagiarism, but this is like, to me, like a real foundational lesson. So I'm just going to click on that.
While it's loading, Holly, you mentioned to me also that you're working to develop a series of, as we talked about a little while ago, the standards and the sort of goals that at each year you want to be able to have kids exit. And I think you said that you're hoping that there's a 6th grade curriculum, a 7th and an 8th, and that as those 8th graders exit, they're going to high school with the same set of skills. How did you sort of come to that, and where did you look to develop that concept?
So it came out of the necessity of how was I going to qualify my school to be a Common Sense Media school. And so there are some restrictions around Common Sense Media, like as far to get that recognition. You have to do so many lessons for a certain number of grade levels. And then I also feel it's really important for them not to just get it in 6th grade. I also teach 7th grade social studies, and I know that I have to repeat a lot of, especially the stuff about fair use. And I'm like, guys, I know you know this because I taught it to you last year, 6th grade.
Myself.
So, but so, they do need that constant kind of an update. So in sixth
Mm,
grade, I really focus on the big lessons. Um, and then seventh and eighth grade, it's more tune up, like a more of a reminder, and I
mm,
use some of the other things. So what I've done is I've developed and I've also had to look at like what is the capacity of the teachers in my
right.
building, what is the time constraints, and all of those factors kind of played into me developing a plan because I taught all sixth graders. I knew that I could do the lesson piece in sixth grade and then use some of the other common sense media resources for seventh and eighth grade. Like my seventh graders do um, the digital compass, and then I actually reach outside common sense media and do something. Google has some stuff that I do with the eighth graders. So it's also not making sure that kids get a new curriculum each year. So I'm not repeating the same stuff, although I do try to hit the big things of, you know, fair use, copyright, kind of creator responsibilities. I
Mm.
use that as a theme each year. Something around cyberbullying is a theme each year. Um, they're just getting it in a different package.
Mm. I also noticed
So,
that the this page that you have showing right now has those crosswalks that we talked about on the right. So if you do want to see places where you might connect these lessons to other ones, for example, if your ELA department's already using Common Core, then you'll see that they've really done a nice job of showing you where those connect. And I don't know that we need to go over there, but I just wanted to point out that that was available.
well, I think that this is really important because often it is like, well, I have to do the standards and I have all these other requirements, and how can I fit these in? And it's like, well, I'm going to show you how doing this lesson can actually go into those targeted standards.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the UK version, like if they do
I was
something
wondering if it's like
different over
Spain,
there.
like
And
Kalur. The
but
Kalur
anyway,
of this page.
that's for that's for another show, I think.
We'll leave that one for the
Um,
left.
so if you the lesson plans are really well laid out for you. You can kind of look to see if you click on this, it will, even if you're really unsure, like the first time
Yeah.
that you are going to teach this and you feel like, oh man, I don't really have background in any of this stuff, you don't have to. They'll give you like, ask this question, um, talk about this. So there's a lot of really explicit teaching pieces, which is a great place to start. And as we all do as great teachers, we kind of what is that term you use, follow with fidelity the
Mm-hmm.
first time you teach something, and then you begin to kind of put your own sauce on it after that.
Right.
And then you can also print out the PDF is kind of like the whole shebang if you want to just kind of look at the overall lesson. Over here, you're going to see the real components. This video, if you want to just show the video, you can do that. This is, and the videos are always embedded somewhere in the slide deck. So you'll see right here. And again, I have an option of English and Spanish, and I open this up. And the slide deck is all ready for me to go. And again, like I said, the first time I often do this with fidelity, but after a while, if I'm teaching something and I want to add another resource that I have from somewhere else, I go ahead and make a copy of this and add in my own slides too. So it's really something that is also has some editing capabilities. And as you can see, here's the video that was initially on here. And these are just really well, they give the learning objectives, they give vocabulary. I can't say enough about how easy this is to use, how teacher friendly it is, and it's all written in student friendly language.
Yep.
My sixth graders have no issue with this. And I would like to point out that Common Sense Media, as you can see, they don't just put out something for everybody. They really target different grade bands. So the language and the asks are going to be age appropriate, right? So you wouldn't see something like this for a kindergartner, but they do have something about not necessarily fair use, but something about news and media literacy that would be age appropriate
Right.
for kindergarten or older students.
And it carries over into other areas too, like the cyberbullying is going to be age appropriate for second grade and age appropriate for 11th grade, with different lessons. And I was saying to Holly before we started that the number of people doing the amount of work that they do at Common Sense to get this set up is just astounding to me. And it really is the kind of one-stop shop for everything that you would want. I'm going to say student facing again. There is great opportunity for your own personal growth in here. And Holly had mentioned getting certified as an individual or as a district. So there's a process for that that you can explore if this is something you discover you're really enjoying and you really feel like you want to develop sort of as an area of your professional focus. But the thing I find so reassuring about it, I guess, is that for any major issue that's going to come up for my colleagues, I can always send them to something at Common Sense, even if they're not going to teach the full lesson. That video on creativity, copyright, and fair use is great, and it's, I think, 4.5 minutes long. So you start a research project in social studies with that, and they're all getting that message, again, from more than one source, but it's a totally bite-sized portion for your social studies teacher that accomplishes this really important goal, and all you've had to do is show them where to find it. So it's that kind of I've yet to come to a question that I haven't been able to find. Let me rephrase. A question relating to digital citizenship that I have not been able to find a resource to really respond to with what they have laid out. And that also includes for family activities. So we've done a couple of different family nights around resources that are developed here. So while Common Sense Media still exists, Common Sense Education has taken on the role of family engagement. And so if it's something you're excited about doing, you can bring it into a family event, whether virtual or in person. And I mentioned Kate Meyer earlier, who's originally teaching in Mount Desert Island. Mount Desert as a district is working on developing this kind of community-wide, family-reinforced, school-reinforced, student-driven digital citizenship awareness campaign. And we're really excited to be helping with that. But one of the things that really struck me about it is that they've recognized right from the outset that it's going to be far more effective if it's reaching everyone. And what this resource has done is really give you as the teacher a locus for whatever you want to do with your students, whatever you might want to do with those families, and then also the framework to develop yourself professionally. And it's in that area where I feel like you would also need to look outside to really sort of flesh out your understanding. Some of the ones that I referenced earlier, ISTE in particular, but that the importance of this resource being available to anyone that in any grade level, in any subject matter, can be really powerful. And one of the things that happened in my building that I was so happy about, we have an incredible Spanish teacher who loves to do digitally driven teaching and learning in a really kind of fascinating way. And she will teach lessons using the Spanish version of this in her Spanish classes, sort of double dipping the language and the content. And it's been great to see what sort of comes out of that. And I didn't think to ask her, and I had some students come in to do a lesson with me, and they were like, yeah, we already did this in Spanish, which was like the best discovery ever. I'm like, I can't teach this lesson because somebody already taught it to you in another language. Awesome. So it was a neat moment. And Senora Dana, if you're out there, well done.
And to build on what you're saying, Jonathan, it does say you can look to see they've give you some time estimates on how to spend. They've really designed this to be like, a class period. They have teachers in mind when they built these programs. Now, this being said, these are guidelines. I have sometimes when we're like when we get to the debate, the sampling and the stealing, or and this is a very common format for Common Sense Media. There's almost always some classroom discussion pieces that sometimes bleed over into more than one lesson. And then often I send off the family activity as kind of like a homework, if you will. And again, that's like, as Jonathan was saying, that's a great way to engage parents in the conversation around around digital literacy and digital citizenship, because they are not, most of them are not digital natives, and they've never been, are not necessarily have been exposed to this type of content before. So I think that the family activity, taking that home, is great. I also want to just kind of point out that the handout is here. Jonathan and I just discovered that it is actually a Google Doc. And so you should be able to make your own copy of this. So you can print these out and do them, by hand. That is, I've done that before, but I could see myself making a copy and distributing this digitally through my LMS, like Google Classroom. Just a note that if you are going to put this through Google Classroom, you do have to make your own copy, because it will not let you make a copy for each student in Google Classroom if you are not the owner of the document. So you would have to do that. And then there is a digital quiz. And so I wouldn't say that I personally wouldn't necessarily use this for grading purposes per se, but I think it's a great formative assessment, a good little check-in. What we've discovered is that the quiz in this format is digital only. So it's designed to be assigned through Google Classroom. But as you can see, it says here, if you don't use Google Classroom, what you can do is view the answers, and then you'll see the questions, the options, and the correct answer. So you could go ahead and make your own quiz using this with Google Forms or whatever format that you want to use. So there is a workaround, but if you do use Google Classroom, boy, it's really handy to just, be able to go in and assign that through Classroom.
Yeah. Could you go back one screen, or one tab, one to the left? So two other things here that I noticed as you were going through. The family activities right there, that offers as Holly said, sort of the take-home assignment. And what really has surprised me in the conversations we've had with each other, and then with families and teachers too, is how frequently students are mistaken for being digital citizens. And as Holly just said to me a few minutes ago, they are digital natives, but they haven't learned that skill set. And so what families are discovering, and what I'm discovering about them as they talk, is that they have an opportunity for great conversation. And in this example, instead of replacing that age-old question, what'd you do in school today, with, well, actually, we have to do this thing together, and you get talking about news and media literacy. Well, the conversations that are exploding around, and we have a lot of it around the social emotional learning discussions about empowering kids not to just be cut off from dangerous websites or limited, but instead to be taught a skill set. The fact that they know how to swipe and they know how to use apps is not the same as knowing how to use it in a responsible and thoughtful way, and a safe way. And so I'm afraid that in so many instances, we forget that this is a skill just like regular literacy. And we can't, what I refer to as the good luck with that theory of teaching, here's a book, good luck with that, is not a way that we're going to teach. But so often, because they fool us effectively by being digital natives, we do, I would say, abdicate a responsibility to step in and really give them tools and skills. And one of the great ways to do that is to get their dinner table conversations focused on these questions as well. And what has emerged in CAPE at least is a growing culture of parents talking to other parents, for example, and sharing ideas around helping kids develop good use sort of practices and habits that people are trying to do on their own. And I think the likelihood that you're going to come up with the best practice in your own head without any resources as a parent and as a teacher is so rare, so slim. And in this instance, what Common Sense has done by organizing it this way has really given a framework for a scope and sequence conversation, a framework for, all right, where are these messages going to reach our kids? And by doing that, created, I'm sure Holly's conversation with her school resource officer, who she's bringing in to talk about issues of online safety, is going to spark all kinds of great ideas for both of them. And then the kids are going to go home and say, oh, we heard this today. And now the parents are looped into that as well. So what has been really helpful for us as we've been trying to develop this, and specifically as we work towards getting Cape Elizabeth certified as a Common Sense district, was the ways in which this pretty rigid structure of the 6 categories and then organized by grade level has actually served to be an incredibly helpful organizing principle, because we can keep coming back to it and looking at what skills they've developed, what we can expect of them, and where our next steps are as well. So what we want to pass on to the high school as skills. And I've had high school teachers call me and say, I'm really delighted to see the shift that's happening in kids' awareness of appropriate use of material that's online, as an example. And Amanda and I have been so delighted to say, we embedded it into the curriculum, we've made that a mission, and we're so happy that it's coming out the other end with a better skill set than they had in recent past. But all of that really has come from the sense that they can't do it on their own. We can't leave them to navigate it without really teaching this in the same way that we would, equations and vocabulary in a world language. This is a measurable, identifiable series of skills, and by organizing it this way, really gives you access to, as an individual, visualizing what those categories are, but also understanding how ubiquitous it is and how many different places. So to circle back to where we began, in our roles, we've been able to sort of farm out, for lack of a better word, some of these responsibilities, but also to be able to answer questions coming into us from the various departments around, what might I do to help in this area? It's been great to be able to have us, it's almost like a common language around these conversations, and just generally raising the awareness that they have to be conversations that are happening all through your building and then through your community as well. So I want to thank you so much for coming today, Holly. Did I leave you anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I think that we've kind of covered for that. I think this is we haven't covered everything with digital citizenship. You've got 6 more weeks to do that,
Right.
or 7 more weeks to do that. But I hope people came away with a real good start, and see the value, as we have highlighted, Common Sense Media. I feel like they're the gold standard out there for digital citizenship. There are other, there are other curriculums out there available, but this is the one that I feel is the most teacher friendly,
Yes.
for anybody that doesn't have a background and is just getting started teaching digital citizenship. You don't have to have a background. You don't have to even create anything. It's all done there for you. So it's a very well packaged, very appropriate program.
Yeah. I think one of the areas that it's been also helpful for us is establishing kind of the credibility of the importance of this, and that if we look at just this slice of what's out there, when you send a colleague or a family to this resource, the fact that it's as in depth and comprehensive as it is demonstrates how many different ways digital citizenship is popping up for our kids, and how if we're avoiding talking about it and avoiding teaching it, direct instructing around it, and having these conversations, we're also and I think I used this word earlier, but we're abdicating responsibility to really develop a skill set in them that is critical and is going to remain critical. So I've liked, as I explore it, and it's a great website to sort of surf as you're trying to think about this, because it will routinely provide me with something that I wasn't aware of, or get me thinking about something in a different way, and give me vocabulary that I can then take elsewhere. So, in the example of the 9Ps, I don't recall a reference to the 9Ps in here, but the general message around positive skills, and, emphasizing the abilities and the opportunities that are afforded by the internet and by digital learning, is throughout this. And so there is a commonality, as Holly said, between the curriculums that are out there, but this as a launching place for both of us has been invaluable. And I really appreciate your coming today, Holly, because you've had so much experience with this as well. And I'll likely drag you back in for the conversation after April break, because you've got that media thing going on.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking with you today, and hopefully we've imparted some people with some good information.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.